Jimmy, needless to say, Afghanistan was not the disaster that the president and Democrats in Congress were hoping to see.
Absolutely not. This was all the things you figure might go right or wrong over the coming year. This was not on the list. And I'll be honest. This is why some of the moderates in the Senate and the moderates in the House have been urging to move quickly on this infrastructure bill. Listen, you have a tied Senate, you have a very narrow House majority, you have a complicated infrastructure bill and a complicated social spending bill, two huge complicated bills that you want to pass really very, very quickly. You don't want something to go wrong. And now something is going wrong. And if that something results, among all the other sort of downsides and human suffering, if that results in weakened support for Biden, which endangers either of these bills, that has huge impacts on the U.S. economy and the Democrats' electoral chances in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why it matters from a political perspective. Obviously, it's a humanitarian disaster. We've got to get Americans and American allies out of there. My friend's son, by the way, is in Bahrain on his way in the Army to Afghanistan. So we're actually putting some troops there. God bless all of them, by the way, and we hope for their safety. What we forget is that this is the narrowest congressional divide in modern American history. You got to go back at least 150 years to find when the Senate and the House were almost exactly split 50-50. Literally, Senate is 50-50, the House, a couple of votes. There is no margin of error. Do you think the moderate Democrats will start flexing some of their power with regards to this $3 trillion social spending plan that the president and some more progressives want to pass?
I think things are going to continue to proceed. As I think basically as Speaker Pelosi wants, at least for the moment, which means this week they'll move forward on the social spending bill. I don't think the moderates are going to end up holding that up. But listen, the Trump tax cuts, which Republicans basically agreed on. I mean, that's what Republicanism is about. There was a lot of back and forth, and it took about 2 months really to get that passed. Right, that's one bill in which there was agreement. This is two bills, which there's still stuff to be hashed out, with a president who right now his approval rate is declining. We don't know what's going to happen in Afghanistan. It could decline a lot more, and we are not close to the finish line with either of these bills. So I would still think they're going to happen. I think there's certainly plenty of headline risk and real existential risk, I think, if this thing really goes south.
Well, Nancy Pelosi basically holding the whole process hostage in a way, simply saying, we're not going to vote on the Senate plan that just passed, by the way, until we know that we're going to pass the larger $3 trillion spending plan that we just talked about. But yet there are moderate Democrats, some of whom are from this area, New Jersey, your area as well, who say, we're not going to pass that unless you raise the cap on the deduction on state and local taxes, which, by the way, is effectively a tax break for wealthy Americans. I mean, how do you see this whole thing playing out?
The moderates are fundamentally, they're not going to do something that's going to, I think, endanger the infrastructure bill, which is something they definitely want to be talking about as they run for re-election. But that's a good point. This bill is the social spending bill is going to have to be paid for. I think one way it's going to be paid for is it's not going to be a $3.5 trillion spending bill. But there are real questions about that SALT cap, about the corporate tax rate. I think that cap does maybe get raised a bit, which progressives aren't going to like. But there are a tremendous amount of moving parts that need to be tacked down in a very short period of time, while the president's approval rating could be dropping. Moderates are right. Time really could be of the essence to get all this stuff through, and right now it's not moving super fast.
Yeah, I mean, not moving fast at all, Jimmy. And again, that SALT deduction cap, which is key to a lot of our viewers here in the Northeast and sort of wealthier, higher tax areas as well. I mean, there's either going to be people putting their House seat on the line, which means that, by the way, the House may flip back to GOP in 2022, or an internal fight with Nancy Pelosi, all at a time when, because of Afghanistan, and by the way, the president being contradicted by his defense secretary and some other higher-ranking members who are now starting to leak internal information. The Democrats, I'm not going to say they're in chaos, but it's certainly not where the party hoped to be just maybe even 1 month ago. All, by the way, with a backdrop of an American economy that is getting stronger by the week and makes it harder to sell larger spending packages because of a weak economy.
Yeah, that last point is a really good one, Brian. It's what I've been saying, is that when we were talking about all this, when the economy was really in bad shape, we want to do infrastructure for the long term and social spending for the long term, but it also seemed like this would be additional stimulus in a really bad economy. Now, listen, those GDP reports are going to be very, very good. They're good. They're going to be very good. Great job reports. And it's going to seem as if, do we really need to do this much? Should we be focused a little bit on the deficit now, since the economy seems to be a lot stronger? Again, just one of many factors sort of slowly draining away, I think, a bit of momentum from these bills. I mean, I thought that was going to happen anyway, and I certainly didn't think the Afghanistan thing would happen, which is another thing sort of eroding support for this. And that SALT cap, I tell you, that is such a tough one for Democrats. I mean, it just goes completely counter to what Democrats have been saying for the past 4 years about inequality and having wealthy Americans pay more. It's a really tricky issue.